Hey, y'all. Happy Wednesday. Make sure it's all working. Okay. Hey. Welcome to Wealthy and Worthy Wednesday. Okay, let's see. Drop me a line and let me know that you're here. I'd love to chat with you all. Last week we had some good conversations happening in the chat. And so, yeah, would love to continue that. So, if you are new to us, welcome. So glad that you found us. Glad you're tuning in with us today. So, our Wealthy and Worthy Wednesdays is our time to gather as a community to talk about all the things, right, that make you wealthy and worthy. It also is kind of our time to gather as a community in preparation for our in-person Wealthy and Worthy event, with which we are still going back and forth with the venue to try to figure out the rescheduling of the event. So it was supposed to happen this past week. We've needed to postpone it and push it till next year so that I could focus on my health. And so we're still committed to showing up for y'all and just engaging with the community and sharing little tips and strategies and cheat codes to help you get up the curve a little bit faster. All right. So for this week's Wealthy and Worthy topic, we are talking about boundaries that build wealth. Okay. And this is about learning how to say no gracefully and still preserving your respect, whether that's in the workplace, whether that's home, whether that's with your friends or your family. A lot of the women that I work with in Legacy League have a hard time saying no. And if that's you, no shame, right? No shame. Again, anything that we share is always about taking an honest look about where you are compared to where you want to be. Okay. And then assessing and adjusting as necessary. Okay. So no shame if that is you. But ultimately, what I want you to walk away with from our time today is I want you to walk away with an understanding that boundaries are not barriers. Okay. They're actually your, think of them as your bridge or bridges to greater abundance. Okay. So we're gonna flip it on its head a little bit. Okay. So that's how I want you to be approaching this discussion today. That's how I want you to be framing your mind around the conversation today, right? As we talk about boundaries. Okay. So the first thing that I think is important that you are mindful of, right, is that boundaries, and I say this a lot in my content, boundaries are a form of wealth. Okay. And when I say that, what I mean is that boundaries allow, I always say boundaries protect love, right? And for me, if you got love, you are a wealthy person, right? You're very, very wealthy. So for me, boundaries allow you to establish parameters around what is important to you in your life, depending on the season that you're in. Okay. And I say that because the seasons change, right? And where you are right now may not be where you are in 6 months or a year from now or a couple of years from now, right? It may change and your priorities may change, which means that the boundaries may need to change, right? The things that you hold true to may need to shift. The things that you once said yes to may need to be a maybe or a no or a I'll get back to you. Okay. So as you think about, right, boundaries, I want you to be also, right, one things one of the things that I often encourage our community to do is really reflect, right? And so with that, it often comes with a question. And so what I want to ask you all today is, what is one thing that you recently said yes to that you knew should have been a no? Right? Keep it real, be honest. This is a transparent time, right? What is one thing that you recently said yes to that you know it should have been a no? Okay? Be thinking about that. All right? So for me, I really haven't had many instances recently where that has been true for me. I've gotten lots and lots of practice. And so most of the time, my yes is a yes and my no is a no. Okay. So I will tell you though that many of the ambitious women that I work with do struggle to say no, even when they know that they should. And I will say there's a variety of reasons for that. I think that shows up with my client base. Sometimes that's a fear of letting other people down. Sometimes it's a fear of missing out, right? Just FOMO, right? Not wanting to not be there, right? Or be in the know or in the thing, right? Sometimes it's wanting to, show up or fill in a gap for somebody that you care about, right? And wanting to be that source of consistency or strength for that person, right? Um, Other things may be feeling like maybe you can't say no. I've had some clients just be like, I can't, maybe in a work scenario, being asked to do something extra or stay later and feeling like saying no would cost them maybe camaraderie or partnership, or even potentially promotion. And so I do want to acknowledge that, right? That there are real things that come up and may cause you to um, feel like you can't say no, right? Even though that may not be the truth, right? So I want you to be mindful of that today, okay? That sometimes it may be hard to say no, right? But what I really want you to know today, right? And what I want you to walk away with today, right, is that there are a variety of ways that you can say no or set a boundary that can help you. I'm not going to say eliminate feeling guilt because I do think that sometimes that guilt just comes because you're changing a pattern and you are shifting the way in which you engage with work or with a person or with a scenario. And that can sometimes feel disorienting and you might feel some type of way, right? Even if it's not guilt, right? But what I want you to know is there are ways to do it that make it a little bit easier. Okay. And so I'm going to share a couple of ways for you to do that today. Okay. We're going to be quick in and out. All right. So the first way that you can go about setting boundaries, I will say, is having what I would call like an advanced decision, right? So you're making an advanced decision about a thing, right? And I often say every yes has to be protected by a lot of no's. Okay. So if you are saying yes to yourself, maybe it's a family commitment or something, um, and a work thing happens last minute, urgent, important, right? How do you maintain that yes that you've already said yes to, right? Whether that's again to family, kids, whatever, right? So having that advanced decision, making the decision in advance will help you stick to the boundary and make it much easier for you, right? The second thing that you can do, and that I've had clients do, is create what I call like an amen corner. right? And this is about accountability, but also support, right? Because sometimes as we negotiate and establish new boundaries, it can feel uncomfortable. Like I mentioned, it can be a difficult thing. And so having a group of people, a small group of people, less than five, right, to help you remember, right, why you're saying no, or why this doesn't fit right now, or how this doesn't align with what you're working towards and what you're aiming to accomplish can really set you up for success. And then the third thing I would say is just trusting yourself, right? So that gut feeling, right? When the thing is asked, right? And you feel that dread that, oh, like I really want to say no, but there's some sort of tug or pull in me that's making me feel like I should say yes or that I have to say yes, right? So honoring those things about yourself that come up when you are faced with a new experience, a new encounter, a new request that you feel like is a little bit above what you're willing to commit. Okay. So those are some those are 3 easy, quick ways, right, that you can start adopting today, right, to help you move through whatever scenarios you're in, whatever, conflict you may be experiencing around commitments in your life or your family or your career, and those are things that can help you make sure that you feel confident about your boundaries, you feel good about your boundaries, you feel like your boundaries are protecting your yes. Okay. So having those priorities, understanding where your support can come from to help you kind of reinforce those boundaries will set you up for success. And so now we're going to add a little more discussion with our resident therapist, Jeannie Johnson. And so we're going to add her to the stage.
Hello, everyone. How's it going?
Hey, welcome to the party.
Happy to be here.
Good. Awesome. Awesome. So we've been talking about boundaries and
Mhm.
we've been discussing, I've laid out for the community a few ways in which they can set boundaries, not necessarily without feeling guilt, but
Yes, love that you said that.
through how they can move through it. Some of it is about honoring their previous commitments. Some of it is about honoring what they are valuing in a specific season or point
Mhm.
in time. Some of it is about having support and community and accountability for them to commit to the things that they said they wanted to commit to.
Mhm.
And so, one of the things that I think is probably going to be super important for them to know and understand from a therapist perspective, right, is what would you say that you see as some signs that a woman's boundaries are being crossed,
Mm.
even if she's telling herself that everything is fine?
Oh man, there's so many. I think the first that I see most often is this fatigue and this lingering general kind of frustration and anxiety that's taking place. Um, so she may find herself where she was maybe ultra giving or inside of a relationship and felt very capable of going the extra mile. There is a limit now, and the fatigue is very clear, even to the effect of like, let's say you have a partner who is often over talking you or speaks very loudly when you're trying to converse, trying to have a dialogue, right,
Yeah.
about something that is contentious between the two of you, and you find that your partner is consistently over speaking. So as you're speaking, they're interrupting you or they're hyperverbal to some degree. And you've noted before, hey, this is something that I need for us to be mindful of. If we're having a conversation, I need like, when it's your time to talk, it's your time to talk. When it's my time to talk, it's my time to talk. And it's got to be protected space, right? And so she's reinforced this over and over again, and it's not being honored. there starts to be this fatigue that happens. So she's maybe unwilling to have conversations at all, or she's very sharp and short,
Mm,
very rigid about where the conversation goes. I see that very, very often. And it surprises their partner. It's like she used to have so much patience, and I really felt like she used to listen to me and hear what I was talking about and really try to, understand me, and not realizing, listen, yeah, that was how she was showing up because the patience was there.
mm,
Now that you're overstepping boundaries consistently, that patience isn't there. Um, that same, uh, I'm trying to think of what the word is. Fuse, the length of a fuse, right? Like some people have
mm.
really long fuse before they kind of explode.
Yep.
The fuse was very, very long at one point, and now it's very short. So I see the fatigue happening. I see women becoming withdrawn from partnerships, from friendships. I think that the human mind is very fun and interesting, and that is it's like actually instinctually protective in some ways, and
Mm,
it'll protect you in ways that you think are not protection, but they are. Like it will say to you, cut someone off, even though that person is like in your life, they're a family member of yours, they're someone you really care about. Maybe they even have like attributes that are really good attributes. And they support you in some way that's important, like when it comes to money or accessibility or something to that effect. But if they are hurting you or harming you, like sometimes the brain isn't like, hey, let's try to work out and figure out how we can stop that and stand up for ourselves. The brain is like, cut it off, cut the whole arm off, just get it out of here, like get them out of here. It's not working. And I find that very interesting. So, someone who's like much more on the side of like being rigid and being isolated and away from people than their natural, like trying to be compromising or working things out.
That's okay. That's you laid out a lot right there. But one of the things that I do want to double tap on is the brain survival cutting them off thing, right? Because I
Mhm.
do think my personal opinion, right, is that we are part of a culture that is overly enamored by cancel culture.
Mhm.
I just cut them off. We done with them. Get them out of here, right? And while I do believe and understand that there are places and time for that,
Sure.
what I'm very curious to know, and I'm sure our audience would benefit from understanding, right, is like, what is a good rule of thumb, right? I understand that it's nuanced and the dynamics differ, I'm certain, with each person in each relationship. But like, what are some good, like, ballpark kind of parameters or boundaries that can be helpful in helping one discern whether, okay, this needs to be cut off,
Mhm.
or maybe my fuse is just really short because I've been trying to be patient and I'm still not getting my needs met. Eh, what would you say to that?
I've always found this question to be like a wonderful question because I think people think there's like, what are the three signs that it's time to like knock them out of your life, or that this person is a bad person and they need to be cut out? And I have to tell you, it is so important to be mindful of your intuition at the
Mhm,
time, to be mindful of what your capacity is. There
mhm,
is a person who is like, you know what? This is a minor thing that's been happening, but it's happening all the time. And it
mhm,
represents for me something that is so important. And this person keeps letting me down or keeps stepping on it or whatever else.
mhm,
That person in their feelings, when they have taken the time out to correct it, if it's been once, if it's been three times, it really doesn't matter. It is about your capacity. And
mhm,
to me, if we're talking about things like cut people off, things like that, generally speaking, I have a high tolerance. My
mhm,
tolerance is a bit higher, meaning I'll explain something to someone several times. I will be able to see the varying degrees of how they adhered to a boundary that I set versus like they got it right every single time, 100% spot on. But there's a person who isn't capable of doing that work as of yet,
Mm,
and they need to recognize their own capacity and how it affects how they show up. To me, when you're seeing those signs of compassion fatigue, when you're seeing those signs that I'm talking about, where you're shorter, where your demeanor is changing, where your feelings about that person are becoming very negative, and you're where you used to root for them, you aren't anymore. That's where we're getting those warning signs that it's time to like back away from the relationship. And I want to make it clear to people, it doesn't have to be forever.
mm, mhm,
There are relationships that you have to take a break from, and a break is okay. And then
mm,
when things change or when things grow, when your capacity maybe increases, you can come back to those relationships. If they're still there, great. If they're not, maybe you've missed out, or hey, you did the thing that was a part of what was best for you. And so they weren't meant to be with you in the next stages of life. Um, I
good.
think I love to, and I love how you were talking about earlier, as I was backstage, I was listening to you talk about how people are trying to be avoidant in their feelings, trying to avoid guilt, and how like it doesn't mean that something's wrong. It can mean that you're changing a pattern. That's why you're having these types of feelings. I love how you said that. I think that's just such an important thing to echo, because people are often trying to avoid by putting things into a category of something being right and wrong. So
Mm,
I'll avoid making a choice and maybe cutting someone off, or um, providing some distance between us in a relationship. I'll avoid doing that because it could be wrong. I could
mm,
be, you know, putting someone out of my life who deserves to stay there, or who is well intended, or whatever else. They want to be right or wrong. And so they don't necessarily make the intuitive move, and sometimes you really do have to support the intuitive mood. And that's the way that you can figure out what is best for me, and whether this is a relationship that I should be cutting off, or a relationship that I can pray to increase capacity. I can spend a little bit less time in so I have increased
mm,
capacity when
mhm.
we spend time together.
Yeah,
I can make sure that other people are there so that again I have increased capacity, because it's not just us one-on-one kind of a thing. Like there are variations that I think are really important. And intuitively, you get to those when you're listening to yourself,
mm,
and you are the authority, and you need to start practicing being that and getting it wrong, so that you can know that there's a very high tolerance for you to do and say and make choices in your life. And then you can trust in that.
I love that. Okay, thank you for breaking that down. So now this got me, and now I'm going down the rabbit hole because now
Okay.
this has me thinking. Okay, so when you talk about right, like the threshold and trusting yourself and all of those things, what if the cutoff game conversation is not necessarily about a relationship? What if it's about your job or your
Mm.
career?
Whew,
How
that's a tough one.
right? Because
Yeah.
we are wealthy and worthy, right? We got all the high impact career women showing up, right? And often saying yes when they really want to say no in work scenarios. And so, how would you advise those women who are kind of contemplating, right? Like I'm not really sure about this. And I was even mentioning earlier, right? Like sometimes you may feel like in a work scenario that you can't say no, right? For
Mhm.
fear of, retaliation or lack of promotion or lack of opportunity or even being perceived as not being a team player. Like
Mhm.
there's so many, layers and for me, how I view corporate America. Um Right? Just so many hoops to jump through,
Mhm.
moving goalpost to manage and monitor, right? And so, like, particularly as women of color, right? Like, how would you suggest that we navigate those type of things?
I'm gonna suggest on the same wavelength as I just spoke to. And I get it, because we're like, essentially what you're saying in that is I want to avoid consequences, right? Because that's what comes when I say no, is consequences. I may not have the favor that I want in my workplace if I say no. I may not get, that means I may not get that promotion that I was looking for in the workplace. I maybe potentially I might, have a blemish on my performance evaluation or something to that degree. And while I have total respect for that, and we say things like, we got to live in the real world, right? We got to be realistic about our jobs, and I can't lose my job and I can't lose my work. And I get the woman who lives inside of that, fully understand that. But also, there is a time where there has to be a decision that you make. And the decision has to be, what I want for my life is this new thing. So, what I want for my life is the step that I've been dreaming of. And the step and the life that you've been dreaming of is one where saying no is a part of your vocabulary. And the people who you have placed around you are people who respond positively to no. If you are unwilling to then go out in your life and live that and see and draw in those people who respect the no, if you're unwilling, you will never reach your dream. It is
Ooh,
not possible. When we are talking about attracting, right? When we're talking about the work that comes in attracting, I think people talk about this all the time, but they're never specific. So I'm gonna be specific. When we're talking about being and we're talking about attracting, we need to embody the person who we're saying that we are. And if that person is a person who sets boundaries well, right? Who's capable of the no, who understands what it takes to get to their dreams, they enact that daily, they live in that daily, and then those who respect it, they stay. Those who do not, they must go. So that might mean the job goes. It might mean your boss does not approve of you. It might mean you don't get a promotion there. But the truth is, that is the way to your new life. You weren't meant to be promoted there, sis. You don't belong there. You were trying to fit in to make sure that you rose, but you don't want to be there. Your dream is not to be there. And if they can't value the no, they're not capable of it. And that's what you are. That's intuitively who you are. That's intuitively what you want. Then it's not the company. Maybe this is the step to the next company. Maybe this is the step if you do want to be in corporate, I mean, because some people that is their dream,
yeah,
right? It's not a dream to be an entrepreneur. They want to be in corporate.
yeah.
So I understand where you're coming from, but we are not in the business in this life of avoiding the hard that it takes to get to where we want to go.
Love.
You have decided to be something. So be it, and watch as other people support that when you choose every day. But you can't choose, then unchoose, and then think you're going to attract the right people. It's not going to happen. That was a very hard lesson for me. A very, very hard lesson. I wanted to be everything everybody wanted me to be all the time. And honestly, the stuff that stuck was not the stuff that should have stuck for a very long time. And
Mm,
it's a hard lesson. So
that's
that's
real.
that's what I've got on that.
I feel you. Listen, right there with you. Um, okay, I love that. Okay, so we're right at time. So, um, ooh, that was okay. I feel like that could get more juicy, but we gonna let it be. So, okay, so y'all got y'all's homework. Okay, y'all got some insight. Y'all got some tidbits. Y'all heard it from the expert therapist here. Y'all have y'all's tips around making sure that you're protecting that and making that advanced decision to say yes or no to something. That make sure you have your accountability group or your amen corner that helps you hold to those standards and it gives you that support when you feel some kind of way after you've done it and you're like, "Ugh," right? Like they're the ones that be like, girl, it's all right. It's all, you can do this. It's gonna be fine, right? Help you move through that. And then the other one is trusting yourself, right?
Mhm.
Trusting that inner knowing, your instinct, your gut, right? To lead you to that higher ground. And so as you're going into the rest of your week, right? The one question, right, that you should be kind of thinking about or mulling over, right, is what is one thing recently that you've said yes to that you knew should have been a no?
Mhm.
Okay. Really, really, really take a minute to pause and just really reflect on that. And another thing that I think can help too is when you are presented with a scenario where you're having to say yes or no to something that you don't really want to do, actually pause in that moment if you can and create that level of awareness and create that space for yourself so that you can intentionally make a different choice. Okay, because sometimes I think we get caught in the pattern of not having great boundaries, and it's just like autopilot, and so you just keep doing the thing again, 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 and then every single time you're like, "Dang it, I should have said no," and then you feel bad, and then you have the shame spiral, right? So we wanna avoid that, right? We wanna avoid the shame spiral because that's not gonna help us move forward to where we wanna be. So practice, 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 practice the rest of this week, practice all next week. Start really embodying these things, as Jeannie mentioned. Start showing up as who you say you want to be and engage in the things that you say matter to you. Okay. So that's all we have for y'all this week. We'll be back next week. Same place, same time. Okay. 12 Central. Okay. And next week, I think we're gonna have a few more of the gang on next week, joining us for the discussion next week. So make sure your socials are on, your notifications are on, so you can be notified when we do go live. We're on every single platform, Twitter or not Twitter. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. And you can search it under me, Dr. Tiana N. Rogers, or you can search it under any of the other ladies. They will be going live as well on their platforms. So that's all we got for y'all this week. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see y'all again next week.
See you then.
Bye.